So Astrid has midterms this week. So she wasn't able. So I'll just do this. You know, the more I do this show, the more I realize how much of a jerk I was once upon a time. For Metal Month, I knew ahead of time I'd be looking into Nine Inch Nails because of the recommendations from a bunch of people I'd received, especially Emily. And I started conversations with Eric to fill out the other 4 weeks. And right at about that same time, I started seeing a lot online about Tom Morello. And honestly, the more I read about him, the more I came to respect what he was doing, especially concerning his musical philosophy. And that is what made me decide to look at Rage Against the Machine. So as I sit here, looking back at my history with this band, as I usually do at about this time, it seems I have to once again go back to the fact that when I first heard Rage Against the Machine, I never really gave them a chance. It really is kind of comedically awful the way I address these bands that have gone on to become classics. Man, if you were to go back in time and talk to me in the early 90s, Red Hot Chili Peppers, childish. Primus, overly theatrically weird in a pretentious and affected sort of way. Nirvana, amateurish. Music was changing in front of me, and all I did was dismiss the folks making the really interesting stuff. The innovators. Go on, say it. You'll feel better. I was wrong. I was just wrong. Completely wrong. I have no idea how my life or my musicianship would have changed if I actually was able to take stock of the important changes that were happening in music in the early 90s. Who knows? Ultimately, though, I guess it doesn't change all that much about how I reflect on the fact now. I will say this, though. If I knew you then, and you're still friends with me now, first of all, wow, you're a complete saint, and thank you. Also, I apologize. I still seem to have the ability to let my mouth get me in trouble from time to time, mostly by feeding the trolls. But someone is wrong on the internet! Looking back, I completely recognize that my musical intransigence must not have been very pleasant to deal with at the time. So, getting back to Rage Against the Machine specifically, what do I know of them? I know Bulls on Parade. I know Killing in the Name of. I know that one song that's at the end of the Matrix movie. Yeah, that's about it. So let me climb out of this phone booth, put on my sunglasses, and fly dramatically off screen while I immerse myself in rage. You want anything?
Give me some bubbles, some real big bubbles.
You got it. Yeah, these songs are hitting me pretty hard. There's a lot to get into. First song, Bomb Track. The song opens with a little theme and variation type riff, but it ends up landing on the 9, which then becomes the root for the verses. Killing in the Name has a fantastic illustration of the difference between dotted eighth, dotted eighth, eighth, and then triplets. So to explain that a little bit, it's during this section. So each one of those on the bottom, it almost sounds as if you're dividing it evenly up, but you're really not. If you take 3 of those 16th notes, 3 of those 16th notes, and 2 of those 16th notes, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. That's what's happening. But after he plays that figure for a couple of times, they go into. Those are actual triplets. Each half of the measure is broken evenly up into 3 pieces. So in other words, you can actually modulate from that. From 4/4 into 6/8 using that. 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6. It's very hard to do if you've got that. To go from that to full triplets is very hard to do. It takes a lot of discipline. Settle for Nothing. That's the first of many songs on this album that highlights just how powerful it can be to pull the tempo back, slow it down. This is something that Jeff Franca and I discussed a lot when we did the Family Peach project out in Colorado a few years ago. We wanted to highlight the hidden funkiness on a couple of the tunes, especially Walk on Gilded Splinters and Stand Back. So we did that by pulling the tempo way down. I think it worked great. Also in Settle for Nothing, the riff accents the 9, while the lyric says, I got the 9. Thought that was a nice touch. Bullet in the Head. I think that's Tom Morello's highlight reel on this album. Between the noise for the guitar verses, accented with the mute button, the very, very interesting guitar solo, which does all kinds of wacky things, especially in terms of its modal landscape. And then the innovative use of either of a slide or a whammy. I can't tell which it is. Know Your Enemy has guest vocalist Maynard James Keenan from Tool. And this was before Tool recorded their first full album. Plus the very Holdsworth Metal Fatigue era sounding solo played entirely in fifths. Fistful of Steel has this amazingly cool single sustained whammy note as the guitar backing track. Just a single note. Who does that? I think it's amazing. Township Rebellion. This might be the best use of dropping tempo to up the intensity of a song I may have ever heard. It's really great. And closing off the album right at the end is Freedom. And in that song, out of nowhere, they drop in some very prog, almost Rush-sounding dual guitar harmony parts. Check it out. Look, I think this actually might be a lot more important than I thought going in. Don't want to jump the gun. I need to peer through this veil of imposed illusion to see to the heart of the forces exercising their will upon us without our knowledge or consent. Do you need anything?
Get me a chunky.
This album came out in 1992. That's a full year before MTV used the term nu metal to describe the music of Korn. But if you look up articles on Rage Against the Machine, like in Wikipedia or whatever, that's the term they use to describe their music. Nu metal. And yes, the music is heavy, but it's not heavy in the usual way that I think of metal music being heavy. Guitar, bass, drums with a front man, right? Well, technically yes, but not really. Well, what do you mean? Is there distortion on guitar? Yes. Dropped tuning? Yes. Power chords? Yes. Riff heavy? Also yes. Sounds like metal to me. What's the hang up? Well, it's not the way guitars are usually featured. Don't know if I can explain it. These songs are not written intro, verse, chorus, solo, verse, chorus, fade, like most things in the rock sphere. Honestly, these songs are more structured like intro, loop, loop, hook, loop, loop, interlude, break, loop, out. And while there's distortion on the guitar, he's playing single coils. He's playing funk type guitars. And there's also heavy use of other effects, especially whammy and mute. And Tom Morello's solos. Normally the function of the solo is to kind of use your technical prowess, right? To elevate the structure of the song, right? To give it a little melodic interlude between verses and choruses. But that's not what's happening here. Tom Morello, when he's playing solos, they concentrate more on the rhythmic and the noise content rather than the melodic content. Oh, you know what it is? Tom Morello is Rage Against the Machine's DJ. That's it. That's totally what I'm hearing. And now that I say that, you know what the closest thing I've heard to this album is? It doesn't come from the metal sphere at all, not even from rock. Sonically, structurally, even politically. The closest thing that I've heard to Rage Against the Machine is Public Enemy. Specifically, Fear of a Black Planet and It Takes a Nation of Millions. Those two albums are the closest things that I can compare to Rage Against the Machine. The entire album is structured like a late 80s, early 90s hardcore hip-hop album. Only with 3 musicians instead of a DJ. And man, is it hard not to use this particular analogy to look at the messages contained in the album. But I really want to steer clear of politics at all costs on this channel. so I won't say much about it. Wouldn't it be great if we could just collectively agree that someone could be wrong without also being an existential threat to society? Yes. Yes, it would. So I guess the best I can do is acknowledge that the politics exist without going into what they are or how they're expressed. And how in the world are you going to pull that off? I read a tweet once that describes ska as the music that plays inside the mind of a 12-year-old boy when he gets extra pizza rolls. Think about it. So using that analogy, Rage Against the Machine is the music that's playing inside the head of every person that's typed a political post in all caps. Careful there. You know that there are actual messages behind those songs, right? I know, you're right. That's a way oversimplification and it's not universally true. But what I'm trying to illustrate is how much a part of the culture that Rage Against the Machine has become. People who might not agree or even understand the overarching message contained in Killing in the Name of can still identify strenuously with the ending refrain. Chunky. You, I won't do what you tell me. We're coming up on 30 years since this album has been released. And it turns out, Rage Against the Machine, it's canon now.